Welcome to Story Chats at Inspy Romance. I'm Elizabeth Madry, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Narelle Atkins.
And I'm Valerie Comer.
Deb Kastner is back with us today to talk about CCR that includes service animals. So thanks, Deb, for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So this was actually a topic you suggested, and I thought we could start out by you telling us what prompted that suggestion. It's a great suggestion. So, but why'd you bring it up? What's the impetus behind it?
I did actually bring it up. I've always had an interest in service dogs. I always had an interest in dogs in general. I've always had my own, but and I do have my own emotional service dog. So I kind of started thinking about how that would work out in fiction. Mm-hmm. And I ended up pitching a 6-book series to Harlequin on different service dogs. It's all a big family, the Winsows, and they have a service dog program. And so I started looking into the different kinds of service dogs. I'm very familiar with like breeds and things. So I didn't have to worry about trying to go from like the beginning. I already had some knowledge of the thing, but I found as I started writing these that I got a lot of very positive feedback from readers.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's cool. Very cool. Okay, well, so I know this was not something that I have ever really paid attention to when I'm reading. Like it's not like sometimes a topic will come up and you're like, oh yeah, and like just off the top of your head, you'll have like 5 books. And then this one, I was like, have I ever had a book? I don't know. So did Valerie or Narelle, did either of you find anything surprising when you were looking into this?
Exactly what you said. It's, and I did searches, as you know. I searched my book recommendations that I have on my author blog and came up with nothing, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. But then again, I don't necessarily even note pets necessarily when you write a book recommendation. So if it's not in the book description and if it's not in what I've written, then you miss it often as well. Right. Yes, but of course, the only books that came to mind were Deb Kastner's books.
Oh, how interesting.
Handy.
Yes, very.
I found the same thing that that I just couldn't put my finger on really anything. And then when I started asking around, like, what is there? And people would give a recommendation, I would read the book description on Amazon and, you know, like 99 times out of 100, not that I looked at 100 books, there was no mention of the dog in the book description. So you're like, is there or isn't there, right? Right. And I think that's because we know that a book description doesn't usually mention the supporting cast, unless something super vital happens that pulls that character, in this case a dog, in. So it was really hard to pinpoint places that might have a book that I wanted to read on the topic.
Yeah, I agree. I was finding it interesting, though. I mean, as many canine books as there out there in the romantic suspense category, you know that people love the dogs. But then when it came to it, I thought I'd find a lot out there. And I was really surprised to discover that there really wasn't much in the way of service dogs in contemporary Christian.
That was what I found was the romantic suspense or thrillers, like those you can, let's like, they've got the dog with the canine vest on it on the cover. You can tell right away, but I'm like, I need not romantic suspense or thriller. I need normal, just plain CCR. And it is tricky. But in today's world where like emotional support animals in particular have become much more accepted, I'm not surprised that you were able to get your series picked up. You know, it's a good branch off, I feel like, to not have the suspense. Yeah.
And it's amazing to me when I did start to really look into what kinds of service dogs there were. I mean, I knew about like hospital therapy dogs and dogs for the blind, that kind of thing, but it is amazing all the things service dogs can do.
Yes.
They can, there's diabetes dogs. There's dogs for people with autism. It's just incredible.
I see on Instagram, I think it's on Instagram when I'm scrolling the reels, there is a woman who is training a dog to detect gluten in food. So it's for celiac disease. Like the dog will sniff the food and raise her paw if there's gluten in the contamination. It's amazing what dogs can do. Yeah. So we are sort of opening the gates broadly in this topic. So therapy animals, they don't have to be officially trained service animals. Like emotional support animals would count if you have a book with that, because there's not really any official certifications for that like there are with, say, a seeing eye dog. So we're not getting into the nitty gritties of the legal differences between the types of therapy dogs. This is not really germane here. So I think we're ready. Deb's dog is ready to go to jump into books and see what we found. So Narelle, do you want to go first?
I will go first with my one and only book. So the one that I'm reading at the moment is Deb Kastner's book, The Marine's Mission. And this is one of her, what was the name of the series again? Did you have a Rocky Mountain?
It's called
Family?
Rocky Mountain Family.
Yes. Yeah, so this is the series that Deb was talking about. And I love this story. I used to go to the gym with a lady who had been a veteran, who'd been injured in one of the conflicts. And she had a service dog who used to sit next to her in a spin class with people flying around, like bikes going crazy, music really loud. And this beautiful dog would just sit with her. And so I have a lot of fondness. I've also been at Romance Rise of America and met Laurie Alice Eakes, and she had at that point, the dog she had then was just absolutely adorable as well. So I've known a few people that have had service dogs, and we did think about getting a service dog for my son at one point in time as well. But now we have an adorable cat that thinks she's a dog, but that's a different story. So getting back to the book, so I really enjoyed this one. So Aaron is, when we first meet him, he's quite brusque and really doesn't want to be having to go into Denver up to the mountains, from Denver up to the mountains in Colorado, in the Rocky Mountains, to find out about this program. So there's basically this program that's being set up by Ruby for returning veterans and military people who are looking for support animals for different reasons. And he's a bit hesitant about it all, and then he really struggles to cope with the fact that the dog that he's matched with is Oscar, and Oscar is a poodle, and that was not the manly dog he expected.
I love that. That's a fun twist.
Yeah, and I adore poodles. Like I adore all dogs, but I do have a particular fondness for poodles. So I just thought, and a military man with a poodle, I just think is adorable. So and the setup for this story is just beautiful, and then it just moves on from there. So I just really liked how he's there for a 4-week program, and then you actually get to see how they work through the program and do the training and bits and pieces, and the romance obviously develops along with that. So I highly recommend looking up The Marine's Mission and all of Deb's books in her Rocky Mountain series, because they're just so much fun and really insightful, and you learn a lot by reading these books as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Valerie, what's your first?
Oh, my first. It's going to be Victoria Bylin's book, The Two of Us. Jake was a police officer whose hearing was badly damaged in the blast that killed his partner. And now he has a hearing dog. So I found that really interesting. His dog's name is Pirate. He meets Maya in Vegas when they are there for her sister's wedding, her pregnant sister's wedding, to his partner's son. And they have opposing views on that marriage. Now, the story is not about Pirate, but he's in just about every scene because he's right there at Jake's side all the time, and alerts him to if the doorbell's ringing or somebody's come in, or all kinds of things like that. And if the dog senses that Jake is distraught, then he becomes an emotional therapy dog, basically. And you've got this very large dog, which as I recall, I think it was a German Shepherd, but I did not write that down, like crawling into his lap. And you're like, big lap. So and this was a book that had been recommended, but when you read the book description, there's nothing in there about this dog pirate. Yeah. So I had to trust that he was in there. And when I saw that in the look inside, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this one, and I really enjoyed it. Victoria Bylin is a great author.
I liked it a lot. And I did the crawling into the lap was really funny because I think you're right that it was a big dog.
It was a big dog.
So it was just sort of surprising to picture. But my dad has collies, one of whom is like an oversized collie. He's huge for a collie, and he thinks he's a lap dog. So he's this 110-pound collie that wants to be in your lap constantly. I think often the big dogs think they're small. and
yeah, there's actually a reason for them to sit in the lap, and what they do is they put pressure on the chest of somebody that has PTSD or is having an anxiety attack, and it actually calms them down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's nice to know. There's a reason. Who knew?
Yes.
Deb knew. Deb knew.
Cool.
That's who knew. That's very cool. Okay. All right, Deb, what's your first book?
My first book is by Melissa Storm. She's writing a series of books called The Church Dogs of Charleston.
Okay.
And they are all Chihuahuas, which for me, I personally don't have Chihuahuas or like Chihuahuas all that much, but my granddaughter has one, my middle daughter has one, my youngest daughter has one. So
oh my goodness,
they're familiar with Chihuahuas, even though we don't technically have one. We have grand Chihuahuas, big time. So this was an interesting book to read. I read the third book, The Winding Path to Love. And basically what the overall series is, Pastor Adam finds a mama and a little litter of Chihuahuas in the nativity scene.
Aww. When
it's really cold outside. So he brings them in and he trains them up as therapy dogs. So even though he started out with the little puppies, each of the books is actually about the grown-up dogs. And this particular book, the heroine, Carolina, I guess it is, her mother had been in an accident and then couldn't walk, had a wheelchair. So they used the Chihuahua Cupcake as a therapy dog. I did think it was interesting at the end, they took the puppy back. So, I mean, I guess I'm more into like service dogs where in my books, they get the dog, you know?
Yeah.
And in this one, they used it as a therapy dog and then brought it back. So, but they gave her another dog at the end. So that was cool. They gave her a Chihuahua with their two front legs missing. So, and the mother was in a wheelchair. Yeah, so I thought that was really neat.
Yeah.
When I think therapy dogs, I have to say I don't right away think Chihuahuas either.
No, me neither, because they're not really, usually they're kind of one-person dogs.
Which I guess would be useful.
I just think of them as yippy. They're like little yippy. Little yippy dogs.
I mean, I can see like a golden retriever just being like right there and adoring you forever. Yeah. Anyways, that's really interesting that Melissa's mind went to Chihuahuas for that. So
yeah, she has two Chihuahuas herself. So
okay.
I think that's maybe where that came from.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Maybe we're just biased, with like the bad rap that Chihuahuas get, and we just don't know them personally.
Oh, I think so. Although, like pit bulls, they get in trouble every time they look at somebody
Sure.
funny. And really, if you compared the two, Chihuahuas are way worse.
Sure.
Don't email us at
Yeah, right.
Story Chat with your,
Right.
with your opinion
No,
on
I said,
that one.
like I said, I have grand Chihuahuas.
Chihuahuas, that's right.
And it also depends on how the dog's been looked after.
Yeah,
So I don't
that's
even,
true.
if
And how
I
it's
think all dogs can be beautiful dogs if they're looked after properly, and every breed can also be a
Absolutely.
disaster if they're neglected. Yeah.
every dog has to be trained. There's no
Yeah.
dog
Yeah.
that cannot be trained. Yeah. Yeah. My first book was Iris by Sharon Srock. And it has a Marine who was injured in the course of, he was a military police officer, and he, somebody shot through the door at him and he got shrapnel in his eyes. So he's not completely blind, but he's mostly blind. So he still sees shapes and colors and such, but not enough to really function. So he has a seeing eye dog, who also does help with his trauma therapy as well, which, I mean, I think dogs just in general are just so loving and empathetic that if you have a dog, you're going to have extra love in your life, because that's what dogs do. And he meets Iris, who's the veterinarian, the new veterinarian in town, when he has to bring the dog, to get looked at the vet. And he's just gruff and grumpy too, sort of along the same lines of like Narelle was mentioning. I think when you're injured, you're allowed to be gruff and grumpy. And so Iris sort of helps to, because the dog, she's like, that dog needs to be walked. He's not getting enough exercise. It's a golden retriever. She's like, you're not taking care of your dog. He's like, I take him out to go to the bathroom, and she's like, that's not enough. He's bored, and he's a very smart dog, and he needs more exercise. You are doing a disservice to this dog. And so she sort of harasses him into starting to live again, because he needs to care for the dog that is there to help him. So I thought that was a fun little way to play that. But it's, again, another one where you don't see the service dog in the blurb, but
I was just going to ask, because it sounds like the dog is very vital to the connection between the two, with her being the veterinarian.
Yeah.
So it's not in the blurb there either.
I don't recall it being in the blurb.
The invisible dogs, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. Dogs need more blurb time, I think.
Noted.
Noted. That's right. So, but it's really good. Narelle, you said you just had the one. Is that correct? Okay, that is legit. Everybody gets busy sometimes. Valerie, do you have a second
Well, yes, I do. I have 3 actually.
one?
Overachiever this week.
That's okay. You can cover me. Very good.
Well, Narelle, I read the book after yours. I didn't read, was it The Marine's Mission? But I read Deb's second book, which is called Opening Her Heart. And so Avery is Ruby's sister, and they both work in these training the dogs and so forth. And so she raises and trains service dogs for assorted needs. And she sees how her dog, Sissy, reacts just before Jake's daughter. Seriously, both of these books have a guy named Jake. That's crazy. I just realized that, sorry. Just before Jake's daughter, Lottie, has an epileptic seizure.
Okay.
So the dog is like already over there, like nosing at her, and Avery's like, she doesn't usually do this. Like, I'm sorry, my dog's she's not fully trained. She's still young, la da da. And then the little girl goes into a full seizure, and the dog is like right there and stretches out beside her and stuff. And so that whole story, again, really revolves around the dogs, not just Sissy, but the other ones that are being trained at that thing. So, Deb, are there more books in that series already released, or are those 2?
Yeah, there's the first one that were before the 2 you just talked about.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see.
So there's 3 already out in that series.
Yeah, Black
3 to go.
Salvation.
Okay.
That was number 1.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I would have had that book, but my order got cancelled from our Christian bookstore. They must have run out of stock. I was very sad. Yes, I will track that book down.
Yeah. It's a fun series. All right, Deb, do you have a second book?
I actually don't, if I'm not going to talk about my own. So
you could talk about the Black Sheep's Salvation. Nobody's mentioned that one
yeah,
yet.
all right. That was the first book in the series, and a guy named Logan comes back to town with his son who has autism.
Okay.
And so the Great Dane, it's a Great Dane in this book. And
who crawls into people's laps.
Probably.
Yeah, again, yeah, that's because
All
with
right.
autism, they don't like to be touched, but they also, a lot of times like a weighted blanket or something works really well for an autistic boy. And so Molly works with the dog Rufus and the boy, and they end up of course, well, they actually, this is a second chance romance. So yeah, he came back after having not been a very good boy when he was younger.
Yeah.
So yeah, but this is a Great Dane in this one. So.
Oh, hello there, puppy.
And speaking of dogs.
Speaking of that, who's he? Introduce us.
This is Gabby,
Hi,
my
Gabby.
emotional support dog.
Hello, precious.
Hey, Gabby.
I have a schnauzer sleeping over here by me. Too fun. Okay, Great Danes are so fun because they totally think they're tiny dogs. My cousin has a Great Dane, and this massive dog just thinks that it is like a Chihuahua, just wants to be in your lap. It's like your head is bigger than my dog, but whatever. All right, so my second, I'm going to sort of cheat and mention a whole series. And the reason that I'm doing it is because in this case, they don't actually highlight a specific dog with a specific person so much, although they do in the last book, but there's the implementation of a service dog program for vets with PTSD that is woven throughout the series. So that's how I'm sneaking around. And that's the BlackThorpe series by Kimberly Rae Jordan. And the last book, you do see one of the dogs working with Marcus's sister. No, I don't remember her name. And I was hoping I was gonna get it, but it's gone. And I did not write it down. But the dogs are trained, they're more emotional support versus like a service dog that, helps you see or navigate with a disability, but they're more for sensing anxiety and helping you calm. And they do like climb on their lap and like would push. Kimberly describes that. And so it's interesting. She didn't say specifically why. So having Deb explain what that is that they're doing was cool. So it's a fun series that I was surprised that I had missed because I really enjoy Kimberly's books. So I was surprised that I hadn't read it. And I read like all 6 books in a week because they were just really good. So that was my second one. All right, Valerie, you said you had one more, right?
I do.
All right.
I have been reading Lee Tobin McClain's Cottage at the Beach this week. I'm not quite done it. And Lee is a Christian author, and this particular series is for a Sweet Clean publisher. But there is actually as much mention of prayer and God and church as in some Christian books that I have read. So I thought I could go ahead and sneak this one in here.
Absolutely.
Erica is a teacher in an at-risk youth program in a school in a small town at the beach, hence the title Cottage at the Beach. And Trey is a recovering ex-cop who's been voluntold to help with her program. It's kind of like, you want to get back to work, you want to get over things, then here, this is your task. And if these people think that you're doing a good enough job and are recovered well enough, then you can come back on the force. So he starts out with his police dog, at his side, who is King, and he's a German Shepherd. And she has this big, sloppy, untrained, crazy puppy. Was it a golden doodle? I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
But just like completely untrained, and just dog doesn't listen, doesn't anything. And that drives Trey crazy because, you're supposed to train him. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. So he had raised King from a puppy. But now early in the story, he has to give King up to a working cop. And so that is extremely traumatic for him and extremely traumatic for the dog. And he takes on helping Erica train her excessively exuberant puppy. But they don't always get along with that because she's like, what do you mean he's not trained? She's just a puppy. Yeah, well, like huge puppy that's making a mess of everything. So it's fun. I've still got about a quarter of that book to go, but and I'm seeing that there's more of King coming back in towards it. And yeah, so that was a specifically police dog trained story that doesn't veer into romantic suspense. It's solidly Christian contemporary romance, or contemporary romance with some Christian overtones. So
yeah, I agree. That one was on my list, but I figured you told me this afternoon you were reading it. I'm like, well, I'll just leave that one for Valerie.
Well, thank you. But you can go ahead and have opinions as well.
I think you covered it. It's a really fun book, and it kicks off a whole series of people who stay in that cottage with their dog of some sort. So there's dogs in that whole series.
I haven't.
You haven't gotten
presumably you can tell that this is the first one in that series that I've read, though I've read tons and tons of Lee's other books.
So I had one more too, which is Forgiven by the Hero by Tara Grace Ericson, which is from last year's Freedom Ridge series. And the hero is training search and rescue dogs.
Oh, interesting.
In that one. So and so there's a little avalanche at one point, and his dogs are useful in helping make sure that they find the people who are trapped in the avalanche without giving too much away. But so since he's in the mountains of Colorado, search and rescue dogs for hiking and snow or summer times, those dogs can be very useful. So they're not a huge part of the plot, but they're enough of that I figured it counted.
I love how in all the books that we've talked about, the dogs each have such a unique purpose, and like I wasn't really aware. I kind of was, but I'd never really stopped and thought about all the different types of emotional or physical support dogs. But we've talked about a seeing eye dog, a hearing ear dog. Is that a thing?
That's what I've always called him. I don't know if that's right or not. But yeah.
And the cop's dog, and the epileptic seizure, and the autism, and so many areas. I mean, it is a really cool thing. So yeah, I think it was interesting and fun that you were able to interest a publisher in a series based around that. I'm sure you're going to have a good time with the remaining books in that series as well.
Yeah, very much. All right, so Deb, thank you. We're good on time, so this is probably a good time to wrap things up. Thank you for joining us again. Tell us where we can find you and your books online. Do you have anything coming out anytime this fall?
Yeah, actually, December 27th, I had the 4th book in the series, and it is based, well, they're all based in Colorado, and this one is a search and rescue avalanche book.
Oh, nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, and it also happens to be love inspired, like the service dog, so much that they decided they were going to do a whole year of books about service dogs.
Oh,
so this January book is going to be the one that kicks it off. It's called Canine Companions.
Okay.
And there'll be a book every month that has a
but they're not all your books.
Of some kind. Not all my books, no.
That's exciting, though.
Yeah.
You started a trend.
Yeah, I somehow did. Yeah, so that book is called Their Unbreakable Bond.
Okay.
Nice.
And it's available for pre-order now most places. You can find all my books at debkastnerbooks.com.
Perfect.
And I'm on Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
Good.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you everyone for joining us at Story Chats. Please drop a comment. Let us know. Maybe we missed your favorite service dog / therapy dog book. I'm sure that there are more out there that we just didn't know. So let us know what we missed. Let us know about dogs. Don't take us to task too much about the Chihuahua thing, please. But we'd love to hear from you. So you can drop a comment on YouTube or on the Story Chats Facebook page, whatever makes you happy. And if you want to find information about the podcast, go to inspyromance.com/storychats. And if you are watching on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. In the meantime, don't forget to fall in love with a good book. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.